You might know me from movies with Max and me. Max is running around. If you see a flying hedgehog, that's just Max wanting to play. I wanted to do another little series. I've got a thing that I do in my classroom. I'm a teacher that I call Storytime with Cav. And Storytime with Cav is basically when we have a story that needs to be told that doesn't quite fit in with the lesson at hand, but is important for the students to know for that to make sense. That sentence did not make sense. Basically, if we're talking about survival stories, I might do the story of the Essex. If we're talking about All Hallows Eve, I'll probably tell the story of Tam Lin. If we're talking about torture, I have a nice little story about lobotomies. If we're talking, then there's another story about the bell ringers in the cemetery, which we're going to get to that because that's one of my favorite stories. But today, I wanted to share in this first edition of Storytime with Cav the story of Tam Lin. I'm not going to actually reference this book much more than this, except to show you it, because it's by Jane Yolen, illustrated by Charles, name I cannot pronounce. I'm just going to tell you right now, the animation, I've been doing Disney for too long. The art is stunning. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. If you like fairy tales, if you like Scottish fairy tales, check it out. Well worth the time. So, Storytime with Cav. Story of Tam Lin. It's a Scottish ballad. Now, once upon a time, there was a girl named Jeanette, or Janet, depending on which translation you're going with. I'm going to call her Janet, because I can. So, Janet lives in Scotland with her mother and father, and her family used to have this really big fancy house, Carterhaugh. And they loved Carterhaugh, but then her great-grandfather's friend went missing, and the fairies just swooped in and took over the house, and the family retreated to the village, and now they live there. And Jeanette's like, I really want Carterhaugh back. It's my birthright. And her parents are like, no, we're leaving the village, we're fine, we're good. Don't mess with the fairies. And Jeanette's like, yeah, okay. So then she turns 16, and she sneaks out of her house at midnight and goes to Carterhaugh, and she sees that it's all just green, which is fairy colored, except for one red rose. And she's like, I'm taking this rose because it's the only beautiful thing here, and this is a symbol of the fact that I will, in fact, get my house back. So she picks the rose. When she picks the rose, this very handsome man appears, and he's like, who's called me from fairyland? That was like the key to my prison, and now I'm here. And she's like, well, I'm Jeanette Mackenzie, and this is my house. And he's like, my name's Tam Lin. And she's like, that's really funny, because my great-grandfather had a friend named Tam Lin, except he died. And there was a whole big scandal. And he's like, no, actually, he didn't die. He got kidnapped by the fairies, because that's me. And the fairy queen saw me and thought, oh, he's pretty. So she decided to keep me. And she's like, huh, is there any way you can be out of that? And he's like, well, you know, for the first while it was pretty good, because every 7 years the fairies have to sacrifice a human captive to hell as their tithe. But the fairy queen loved me because I was so pretty, and she decided to keep me. This year it's my turn to be sacrificed, so also the fairies aren't very nice, so yeah, I'd like to get out, but the only way that I can get out is if someone who loves me is willing to hold on tight to me and not let me go, and everyone who loves me is dead. And she's like, huh, well, if it's either death or someone loving you, I guess I could love you. I mean, you're not ugly. We could maybe make this work. She's like, what do I need to do? So he gives her the plan. So the next night, it's All Hallows Eve. The border between magic and regular world is really, really squishy. So Jeanette has a flask of holy water that she got from the church. She's got some dirt and a green cloak. She goes to this crossroads. You know, when roads do this. She goes to a crossroads. You should see me teach. It's hilarious. She goes to a crossroads where there's a conveniently located well, and she waits. So there's 3 horses that are going by. The first, 4 horses, technically. The first is the fairy queen. The second is this dude who is not Tam Lin. He's pretty. He looks like a king. She's like, oh, he's nice. But no, not my Tam Lin. The second guy goes by. He looks like a priest. And she's like, also pretty, but not my Tam Lin. The third one is on a white horse, and he's got a smile on his face, and she's like, oh, that's my Tam Lin. So she runs up, grabs him, pulls him off the horse, and just squeezes him tight. And the fairy queen immediately loops around, and she's like, hey, I know I was going to sacrifice him, but, like, he's mine. And Jeanette's like, nope, mine now. And the Fairy Queen says, give me back Tam Lin, and I'll give you gold and silver and jewels. And Jeanette says, I'm stealing this directly from that book. I have all the gold I need in my mother's hair, all the silver I need in my father's, and the only diamonds I need shine in my true love's eyes. And the Fairy Queen's like, okay, give me back Tam Lin and I'll give you Carter Ha. And Jeanette thought about it, thinks about it, she thinks about it, she's still holding Tam Lin, and she goes, you know, tempting, but I'm gonna have Tam Lin and Carter Ha, so no. All I have to do is hold on to him for 5 more minutes, right? And the Fairy Queen's like, yeah, but can you hold on to him for a full 5 minutes? So she turns Tam Lin into a lion, and Jeanette's still holding on, and the lion's breathing in her face and kind of growling and snarling, and like scratching his paws, and she's like, okay, I got this, I got this. The Fairy Queen's like, all right, okay, you passed the lion test. She turns Tam Lin into a giant snake. He's all scaly and hissing. Jeanette, in my adaptation of the story, is always afraid of snakes. So she's closing her eyes, and she's like holding tight, holding tight, holding tight, holding tight. And then the Fairy Queen's like, all right, okay, here's the last one. Let's make this a good one. So she turns him into a fiery hot brand. Now in some stories, it's an iron brand, which I find silly because fairies can't work iron, but whatever. So he's a burning hot little piece of metal. And Jeanette's like, ow, 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 ow. So she kind of cheats. She runs over to the well, chucks Tam Lin in there, takes the holy water and sprinkles it in there. So then Tam Lin pops out. He's naked, because of course he is. She takes her green cloak, wraps it around him to cover him up. Then they take their little vial of dirt and sprinkle it around themselves in a big circle and hold hands and then turn back to face the Queen. And the Queen is like, how dare you? How dare you? You won. I'm irritated. Curses on you and your house and your family and your pets. And Tam Lin's like, hey, funny story. Holy water, dirt circle, curses bounce from us back to you. Which is basically the equivalent of I am rubber, you are glue. And the Fairy Queen's like, oh, brat. And then the sun comes up because they've spent the whole time doing this and they haven't done their sacrifice. The fairies have to go back because it's now All Saints Day, and it's just unfortunate for them. And then Jeanette and Tam Lin actually fall in love and live happily ever after. Oh, and because the fairies got driven away without their tithe, they lost Carter Ha, so Jeanette got it back, and she and Tam Lin made it a lovely house. It's nice. I know. We love it when evil fairies are punished. The story of Tam Lin is interesting. I taught it last year as part of a fairy tale unit, and we were talking about the fact that in Scotland and Ireland, all the fairy stories are about evil fairies, kind of labyrinthy, like fairies kidnapping people, as opposed to in England and other places where fairies are nice and kind. So in those stories, the Cinderella stories are mostly about characters, heroines, saving themselves. Like the Cinderella story, she saves herself. She has no fairy godmother. In Scotland and Ireland, fairies just come in and they swoop and they kill things, and they're bad. The context that I told the story this year was because we were talking about All Hallows Eve, and that was kind of an example for the blurring of lines between our world and the spirit world in Western culture. So that's the story of Tam Lin. I hope you enjoyed it, and that was Storytime with Cav. Have an excellent day.